Hey guys, I'm Mark.
I'm Alon.
And welcome to another episode of The Next Man Up. Hey dads, welcome in once again to the Next Man Up podcast, where we are about raising up the next generation of men, because when boys become healthy and godly men, everyone benefits. My name is Mark Stanifer, your host, and I'm excited to be with you today. And I'm looking forward to sharing today's guest with you. His name is Mike Clouse. Mike and I met a few years ago and quickly became friends. And so I'm excited to be able to bring him to the podcast, to the show today. In part just to share his story, who he is, husband, father of a couple boys, and a fantastic guy, as well as the work that Mike does to help people to understand who they are and how they show up has direct relevance for dads today and for boys who are on the path to become men. And so, like I said, I'm excited to bring to you this conversation that we had with Mike around identity and unpacking all that means. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Here is part one of my conversation with Mike Clouse. Mike Clouse, what a privilege it is for you to be on the show with us today, man. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Not near the privilege as it is to be on the show with you. I'm humbled.
Well, you flatter us. I know our listeners are in for a treat. Just knowing you, that the last couple years that I do, your heart, your passion for people and growth, and the fact that you're a dad and husband as well. I'm kind of stealing your thunder here. I know what you have to say will speak directly to the guys that are listening, and so I'm excited for you to share your story and your insight and wisdom with them.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much.
So let's start with, who is Mike Clouse, and kind of fill in some of those gaps for us.
Yeah. Boy, there's a loaded question, right? Who is Mike Clouse? Well, like anybody, right? Our storylines are seldom straight.
Yeah, that's right.
Lots of bends, turns, twists, and I grew up in a tiny, tiny little town called Rockford, Ohio. That's about 2 hours away. You know, my parents still live in the same house I grew up in. It's the same house they bought after they were married, right? So, town of maybe 500-600 people, 4-way flasher and a stoplight.
Nice.
That's about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, grew up in one of those schools where not only were both of my parents teachers in the school system, I had them both as teachers at some point along the way. But you knew everybody in your class, 4 grades above you, 4 grades below you. And it was hard to get away with anything. Eyes were everywhere. So
not that you ever wanted to get away with anything, but should somebody ever think deviously like that?
Right. They at least had to be sneakier than I was.
That's right.
But yeah, grew up in a tiny, tiny little town. It was fantastic. And the values that I grew up with, you know, again, my parents not only being teachers, but my dad was our Sunday school teacher. And, you know, faith wasn't anything that was forced on us, but it was definitely very important to my parents.
Yeah.
And they made sure, again, they didn't force anything upon us, but they lived it out. And it was obvious. So bringing that away to me with everything I do, you know, now I am a father of 2 boys, a 10-year-old and a 13-year-old in a few days. He'll be 13 in a few days. Anderson and Grady. Anderson's the oldest. Kara teaches 2nd grade. So she taught kindergarten for 16 years. And then for the last 2 years now, she's been teaching 2nd grade. And me, myself, you know, my path goes all the way from, as far as education and career, degrees in science, biology, chemistry, and industrial hygiene.
Oh my goodness.
But yet here I am as a leadership executive and even life coach now. And I've been coaching for, almost 9 years.
Wow. I don't think I knew it was that long. I knew it was for a number of years, but I don't think I knew it was 9.
Yeah. For over 20 years, I've been in some kind of some role that led to advising, mentoring, serving people in some way, shape, and form that helped them kind of figure out what questions they need to be asking, what kind of information do they need to gather to make something happen for them. For most of those 20 years, it was within higher education, admissions, financial aid, and so forth. For the last 9 now, it's been coaching, and by far my favorite.
Well, we're going to get into that. I'm excited to share that part of the journey, because you and I, in many ways, have that in common, at least for this season of life right now. But before we get there, I'm always curious when I'm talking to other husbands and dads and men about their relationship with their father. So you mentioned that your dad was a school teacher, Sunday school teacher. So you had a whole dose of dad, almost like wherever you.
I did.
Maybe he was coach too at some point in time.
He was.
Yeah.
Actually.
See. Yep. So tell us about your relationship with your dad growing up, and even now as you're a father yourself.
Yeah. It's run the gamut. As that relationship has kind of run the gamut of its feelings, as I would imagine many father-son relationships do. Always a great relationship in the fact that there was never a question of dad's love, not just for me, but for all of us. A protector, never missed a game, even when he wasn't my coach. He was my junior high football coach for a couple of years. He was my little league baseball coach for several years. And even when he wasn't, never missed a game, was always there. He's got a laugh that's infectious, and reverberates, a big laugh. So, I never even when I played football in high school, I never had to guess if dad was there. I could hear him laughing in the stands before the game. And, he was just always there. So good relationship. Healthy relationship. Where it got strained, when you talk about running the gamut, where it was strained was more so in the area of athletics. Dad loved sports, was a consummate competitor. And so there were some times where if it was on edge or stressed at all, it was typically around athletics. My dad's 5'8". I am 6'4". So
there's a little difference there.
There's a little difference. And he's a good athlete, played all the sports he could. And when he had a son that had all the height he ever dreamed of, it was learning this after the fact. We've had some really great conversations. He admitted he was reliving some of that through me, and what he was intending to help me grow and stretch and be my best, I wasn't interpreting in that way. Right. So there were some tensions and things here and there, just around that. Right. But all in all, it guess I'm going further than maybe what you asked.
No, it's good.
But there was a moment in high school where it was another one of those kind of tense moments around sports and athletics and performance and things. And I made a comment without thinking that really hurt him. I remember it. I remember it was like yesterday, because I can remember the look on my dad's face when I said it, and I could tell it cut him, and I didn't want it to. That was kind of the end of that conversation. But then the next day, when I got home from school, there was a letter on my pillow, and Dad took the time to sit down and write out a note to me, and he just laid his heart out. He may not have been good at sharing it face to face, but he put it down on paper, as far as where he was coming from and his apologies at the pressure, and letting me know, how the comment hurt, not in a judgmental way, but, and ever since that day, it's been absolutely amazing.
Wow.
It really has. It's been absolutely amazing. And the older I get, the smarter I realize he was all the time. And it's just a really, really great relationship today. It was always good, but that was a turning point in which it just continued to get better.
Do you remember what you were feeling or experiencing as you were reading that letter? Like,
besides crying my my eyes out. It was a moment where I understand it now better even than I did then, but it was a moment where I understood that, just how easily communication can be misunderstood. Right. I was seeing his communication to me as a constant reminder of my imperfection, of just, as a reminder of my imperfection, as an expectation of performing in a way that keeps others happy, makes others happy, makes him happy, makes others happy. That's how I was interpreting it. Again, looking back now, I can put those words to it. I don't think I could even put it then. But I did understand that I totally misunderstood what was coming across.
And through that letter, he was able to really communicate his intent.
Yeah, he did. He communicated it. He communicated his intent very well. Again, just sharing his feelings and what he saw in me and for me and wanted the best for me. And wanted to apologize for how I was seeing it, taking it.
Yeah. No, it's a courageous step by a dad who was wounded and chose not to lash out or to, obviously I wasn't there, but what I heard in your story, it wasn't that he was trying to punish you or to discipline you. It was like, we're on separate pages and I need to communicate to my son in a different way so that he understands. And boy, message sent and message received.
Message sent and message received. I don't even remember. I know there was a hug, after reading that letter, but I don't even remember some of the exact conversation. And I don't know that there was a whole lot of conversation that needed to be had around that.
Yeah.
After the letter.
Yeah.
It just, things changed for both of us.
Wow.
And it was great. And it's not the first time, I won't hit you with another, but it's not the first time my dad showed me amazing leadership by humbling himself and apologizing, both to me and to other people.
Wow. Yeah. Just that effort of saying I'm sorry in a sincere way, not just the words.
Yes.
But when you know it's legitimate, it's genuine, it's heartfelt, boy, that goes a long way.
Sure does. Sure does.
How do you think the example that you got as dad growing up really influenced you in the man that you are and the father that you are today?
Man, so many ways. So many ways. One, just based on that story alone, the ability to give myself a great grace as a father now, just right now, right where we're all kind of stuck at home with the timing of things, and it's not stuck at home, right? There are moments where it feels like stuck at home, but it's not stuck at home because both my parents, and dad was the dad, even though he's a teacher. Hey, school's canceled because of fog. Let's load up in the station wagon and go somewhere.
Nice.
Right. So it was always, there was family stuff all the time. So just very involved and engaged with the family. So I had the example of very engaged parents, father included. What I just shared about the humility and forgiveness. I can't tell you how many times I've already sat down with my own boys, separately and together, and say, hey, guys, I didn't handle that the best way. Have it to do over again. This is the way. Just yesterday, I sat down with them. I heard them arguing, and they'd been one of those days where they'd been together too long. They're arguing, and I went out, and I just took over and started telling both of them. And it was only after I was already into it and thinking about it later that I realized I didn't take the time just to ask them some questions and listen to what was going on first to help them sort it out. I just went in and took control, which then, caused them to kind of want to fight back. Cause it's like, Dad, it wasn't that way. But I was, sat and thought about it a while, went back and sat down with them and said, hey guys, I handled that. I didn't handle that well. I did not give you the opportunity to explain to me what was going on and help you sort it out. And I said, I'm sorry, will you forgive me? And they were like, yeah, it's okay, Dad. So that is a direct relation to, again, the example that my dad
Yeah.
gave me.
Those are such powerful examples. You know this in the work that you do, but we really connect memory with feeling, and it becomes etched in our memory banks. I love the movie Inside Out and how they captured visually the memories, right? And these core memories and these other memories. But the attachment of emotion and experience really creates this memory. And I think apologizing to children, to spouse, to others, it really creates that moment of emotional connection and vulnerability that connects that experience in a positive way versus a negative way. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Totally, completely. Yeah, completely. Because the overall feelings of that time wasn't the best, right?
Yeah.
But the way it wrapped up and the impact that it had, the positive impact and the lessons learned through it. When I choke up telling that story, it's out of just joy, right? And just what it wrapped up, what it embodies, what it wraps up, and the many lessons that are that come from that: vulnerability, humility, and how there's much more courage in being appropriately vulnerable. How much more courage there is in being appropriately vulnerable and humble than to power up. And be, I don't know what the right word is, but to just show up bigger than the moment requires.
You and I could talk for days on that very topic.
Yes, we could.
Because I am right with you. You know, often the act, the behavior, the thought that we avoid is the one that takes more courage. And more bravery. So, you know, us guys, we like to talk about courage and bravery. And often we see that as jumping out of a plane or jumping a motorcycle, right? Or whatever, right. The extreme sports as an example. But really often it's that act of humility, that act of forgiveness, that change in thinking that we avoid, that is really the brave and courageous act.
It's so true. So true. Well said, my friend.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So I know this, you know this. Dads have a significant influence in the men that we become, in us. But I'm wondering if there were other men in your life, instrumental, significant men growing up that left a significant impact on the man that you are today.
Most definitely. And it's, as I think about that question, it's really pretty humbling at how blessed I've been with just that, because I know it can't be the same for many. But being a part of both my parents being school teachers and being a part of, I'm going to call it a family, like that small school, because my parents were teachers, because they were coaches, because they were involved with activities. Our family was bigger than just our immediate family. There were so many other teachers and coaches that were more than just teachers and coaches in my life.
Yep.
They were actually like, what do I say? Regional parents. You know what I mean? It was that we all knew, there's so many people, and I know not everybody likes this, but it was perfect for the way I'm wired. There were men like I'd say at least half of the coaches I had throughout school were also guys that I could go, and I wouldn't talk about real deep stuff with, but I felt comfortable, felt comfortable and safe around them. A few of them were guys Dad coached with, so they'd be over at the house often. We'd fish together. You know, even as a kid, we'd be fishing together in the summers. And so they were guys that were not only, I knew at practice, they weren't only interested in just helping me to be a better athlete. They were wanting us to become better young men.
Yeah.
So, you know, just from that point, there's my dad, Carl Swander. He was another football coach of mine. And then a lot of those coaches they're Dubler. I could start naming all kinds of names. Ronnie Seawright, Jeff Long. They were just good guys that that were there. In college, Will Miller, he was our campus pastor, still buddies today. Don't talk to him near as much as I would like to, but he was a big factor. Greg Jewett was the advisor for Fellowship of Christian Athletes, and I was the president of Fellowship of Christian Athletes in college. So he and I got really tight. He was kind of like a father away from home. Not kind of like he and Will.
He was.
Were both. They were those fathers away from home, because it wasn't just, hey, let's got to talk about this. It was like, come on, Clouse, get your head on straight. You know what I mean? It may not have been in those words, but they loved me enough to tell me what I needed to hear, not what I wanted to hear. And I could keep going on. Even now, other guys, it's probably more like peers, but I've never had a season in which I didn't have at least one other guy, in my life that cared for me.
What a gift. What a gift.
It certainly is.
And the other thing that I hear in you is an openness and a receptivity to that. You know, obviously you're smarter and wiser and more experienced today than you were back in college.
I'd like to think so.
Well, we'll just make the assumption that you are for the sake of this. No, but like even back then, you know, however far back then is in your mind, it sounds like there was a receptivity to other voices in your life that you knew had your best interest at heart. At least that's what I hear anyway in your story.
No, you're exactly right. And I've never really thought about it before, but you're exactly right. And here's kind of a funny little, this just went through my mind as you said it. I've always, because of some of those early on things with dad and sports, again, not dad's fault, just the way I was interpreting some things, right? I developed this desire, this need, or this wiring of people pleasing, that was success. That success was pleasing people. And I think an impact of that was, I'm processing. An impact of that was being receptive to the input of others. Sometimes to the point of my detriment, but not realizing that until now, but just some of that people pleasing kind of wired me to oftentimes wanting someone I trusted to go to and say, this is what I'm thinking. Is it okay?
Yep.
So wanting at least one person, wanting somebody that I could trust, for that feedback.
Yeah. Good for you. Good for you. So here's a question that I love to ask guests on the show, and even just in conversation around this topic. So was there a point in your development where you really felt like, I have become a man, or maybe you were wrestling with what does it mean and has it happened? But like, was there a point in your life that stands out as you think about that one?
Maybe next year. No, good question. See, there's another one of the corny dad jokes.
Right.
Nothing super definitive as like a moment, but what I can say is where it hit me. I think where it did hit me, and probably for not reasons most would think, but where it really hit me was as I was approaching the end of college and I didn't have anything lined up yet. And it was this realization that, wow,
this just got real.
This just got real. I'm not coming back here next fall, right? I'm not going to be living that I know of. I'm not going to be living, in a building with a whole bunch of buddies, and going to class and being as carefree as I had been. And to follow that up, I did find a job within a few months, and it was a tough job. It was a really tough job from the standpoint of the environment and some of the things I had to do. It was an environmental job, and it wasn't a whole lot of fun. And I needed to pay bills, and I needed to gain experience so that I could hopefully work into something later. Right. So it was probably, now that I think about it, it wasn't necessarily a moment, but it was a season from about April, May of 96 to probably then be the fall to winter of 97.
Mm. So it's interesting that you use the word season. We'll get into that because that plays heavily into the work that you do and just thinking about and cooperating with seasons. But I often find it's different for every guy, and often they're like, "Have I arrived yet? I don't know."
Right.
Or there's a moment. Sometimes it's your first kid. Sometimes it's getting married. But our listeners will know one of the things that we are about here is helping to create those moments for boys so that they don't ever wonder that there is that threshold that is literally and figuratively crossed, so that they can, when they get that question when they're 45 or 60, they can look back and say, yep, I know exactly when it happened. And I remember the event. I remember the men that were around me. I remember the experience. And so often today, because we've lost this tool of rite of passage or initiation, guys just don't know. They don't know. And many are still wondering, even as they go throughout their adult life, am I a man? You mentioned powering up earlier, right? Sometimes I think that is a reaction, because there's a sense of, well, I need to prove something. I need to prove manhood here. And so I power up, because that's how we prove manhood. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself, and this is a little bit of a commercial, but it ties right into the work that we do here.
Does.
Like, what would it be like for a whole generation of boys that have become men to be able to say, oh, I know exactly when it happened,
right,
and I remember who was there, and I remember how important it was, and I didn't have it all figured out, but I was promoted into the ranks, and I took my place from there forward.
Yeah, no, I agree wholeheartedly.
So that's a great backdrop of who you are and how we get to the point now, as we transition really into some specifics about what you do. So you mentioned earlier this mentoring, advising, people development has really been a part of your professional life for a number of years. When did you begin to really make the switch? Not so much like it was in 2004, but like when did you, or how did you begin to make that switch to move directly into the coaching work that you're doing today?
Yeah, it happened in, I can actually give you a year. It was in 2010. At that point, I had done enough work that it was obvious the stuff I loved most, and at that time I was afforded the opportunity to do, were opportunities to connect. I was connecting with clients, and those clients, again, were everything from an individual that was looking to go back to school or to pay for school, to a client that was actually a school themselves that needed set up on software so that they could serve their students, and as well as just working with people that wanted to learn and develop in some way.
Okay.
And I was getting opportunities to do this kind of stuff in everything from official to unofficial ways, and I simply loved it. Not because I felt like I had stuff to tell them, because I don't know, in some cases, I didn't know any more about what they were wanting to learn than they did. What I did have was a desire to help them figure it out and do something about it. So I would just go gather resources, information, everything I could, put it together in some kind of a format. And then, my trainings, little did I know, were more of a facilitated conversation from the beginning, because I never felt like I was in a position to stand up front and just tell people, this is what it is. This is how it's done. This is the way you should do it, outside of a few moments. But what I loved doing was putting it out there, giving frameworks, and then having conversations around things, and basically leveraging the knowledge and experience and everything in the room, and just being someone to help kind of guide it along and keep it moving in a productive manner, and hopefully having some fun while we did it. And it was in 2010, February 2010, when the company I was working for closed the Ohio office I was working at. There was no warning. They closed our Ohio office. So 2 weeks after our second son was born, I'm without work, and I spent a few months at home. Kara was finishing out the school year, taking care of the boys. And then as soon as she was out of school, I jumped on an opportunity to be a contract trainer at a great new company that had just moved into the area. And for that company, I started out as an operations trainer.
Okay.
So I went in, I actually learned pieces of their operations so that I could help train new monogrammers, new warehouse people. They were growing so fast, they just needed to bring more people in, and they needed to get them up to speed. So I was there to help get these people up to speed and do their jobs as quickly and as efficiently and as effectively as possible. Fell in love with the company. Great mission. What they were doing was bigger than the product they were making, which was fantastic. And about that training lasted for about 8 months. And at the end of that 8 months, I started to know plenty of people. I started to get to know plenty of people in the C-suite level of their company. They're just very personable people. And the next thing I know, they're talking about, hey, we're putting together a team of coaches. You know, we've got all these independent consultants out there. They've grown so fast. They don't have the confidence, courage, and need to build skills to lead their teams. Would you be interested in this coaching role? And I looked at the job description they handed me, and I read through it, and I remember thinking, this isn't a job. This is a ministry. This is a ministry, and you're going to pay a salary for this?
You're going to pay me to do this work?
And you're going to pay a good salary to do this stuff with other people?
Right.
You know, and as I'm looking at the job description, it was leadership development. It wasn't me trying to teach them, but really helping them set goals, guide them through their own development, help them put frameworks together. It was about teaching them to fish, not giving them the fish. And I was like, whoa, yeah, I'd love to give it a shot. And that's how it happened. I mean, it was that, I would call it divine intervention. It was just being in that space, having the opportunity, knowing the right people. And they put us through coach training. You know, I didn't even know coaching was a field. I didn't even know it was something you could do, let alone something you'd be paid for. For me, a coach was, the guy on the sidelines with the whistle.
Calling the plays.
Call the plays, right? And give us the drills. And what I found was a role that took everything I loved about higher ed and training and development and all those other pieces and brought it together in an alignment with a framework and a bigger purpose that just lit me up. Because it was less, my expertise lies in not in being necessarily a subject matter expert, although it can help. Yeah. It was more about becoming an expert and just helping people dive deeper, help them explore, help them recognize their own blind spots, which in turn, hey, it helps me recognize my blind spots, right? So I may be getting ahead of myself now, but the more I got into coaching, the more I practiced it, the more I learned about it, the more I did it with other people, the more I was like, this is the space I want to be in with people. This is the space where I feel like I not only get a lot out of it, but I'm giving what I'm meant to give.
So I wonder. So I'm connecting back to you as a husband and a dad, and just wondering how much of that coaching approach or coaching philosophy might have influenced how you parent your boys, and even how you show up for your wife.
Greatly so. And I probably, I need to think about this. I'm going to make this statement. I really need to think about it too and continue to learn. But I think my best moments and my best seasons in being a spouse, being a husband, being a father, being a friend, being a brother, are those moments where I'm implementing more of the coaching perspective and mindset than anything else. Because the coaching mindset and approach is more about, again, it's about understanding. It's about listening more than you're talking. It's about listening with not just your ears, but with your eyes, your heart, your gut, a holistic type of listening. And kind of going back to what I said about my dad and my mentors is, it's about telling people when you do speak and you do give statements, it's about telling people what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. And hopefully what they want to hear is what they need to hear more often than not. But we also know that's not always the case. Right. So shortened Cliff Notes version of that is it affects my every area of my life in positive ways.
That has been my experience too, in an extremely positive and beneficial way. Coaching has changed how I show up, whether I'm getting paid to do it or I'm serving at home. Coaching has just changed how I show up. It's been fantastic for me, and it sounds like it's been the same for you.
It sure has. When I get myself in the most trouble in those situations, it's because I've totally forgotten everything I've learned from my coaching, and I get into those power up moments. Right?
Yeah. Well, guys, I hope you're enjoying the conversation with Mike as much as I did. I know I learned a number of things about Mike's background that I didn't know, and certainly benefited from the experience and the wisdom. And one of the things I always appreciate about Mike is his willingness to be authentic, to be transparent, to be open about what's going on, what's working, what's not, and to share his story. And he certainly brought that for us today. Well, this conversation went for over an hour, but we're going to end up breaking this into 2 separate episodes. So we're going to pause this one here, and I promise, as we always do, we'll pick up next time right where we left off and finish this conversation as we get into more about what identity means and how it influences how we show up in all of our relationships and the different roles that we play. And so I'm looking forward to that, and that's where we will pick up next week. So stay with us. Hope you guys have a great week, and we'll be back next time with part 2 on this conversation with Mike Clouse. Hey listeners, thanks for journeying with us on this Next Man Up podcast. We would love to hear from you. Maybe you have a question or an idea, perhaps a topic for us to consider. If that's you and you want to reach out to us, you can get us at feedback@thenextmanup.com. That's feedback@thenextmanup.com. Again, we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, we'll see you later.